In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make 8 of these 2-foot wide by 4-foot tall Studio Acoustic panels for just $250 Canadian. If you were to find these exact same panels in store, you're looking at about $750 for 6. For the frame of the panels, you're going to need 16 pieces of the 8-foot long 1x4 lumber. I found these for $6.99 each, so a total of $111.84 for the 16. Each panel requires 2 of these, so for making 8 panels, that's why we need 16. The outside dimensions of the panels are going to be 48 inches by 24 inches, or 4 feet by 2 feet. So the sides are going to be cut to 46.5 inches, as they will be on the inside of the frame, and then the thickness of the top and bottom board will add up to the 48 inches. For the purpose of cutting, I am using a pallet, and I'm actually going to screw just a guide on here just to keep the wood butted up against it while I do my cut. If you have access to a sawhorse, you can just go ahead and use that. Otherwise, this is a good method for those who don't. Push the wood right up against there, and she won't slide around while I do the cutting. Now, instead of measuring every cut, I can just use this template piece to mark out the rest of the cuts required. The 8-foot lengths work perfectly because I can cut them pretty much in half to get 2 lengths of the 46.5. That'll be the sides of the studio panel. Now I'm going to measure templates and cut the top. So these ones are going to be measured at exactly 2 feet, or 24 inches. So I've got this one marked out. This is going to be my 24-inch template piece. With these measurements, you'll be able to get all of the required pieces for the studio panel from just 2 of the 8-foot boards. You'll end up with 2 support rail pieces at approximately 22.5 inches. This length will vary, and I'll go over that in just a couple minutes. You'll also get 2 pieces for the top and bottom at 24 inches and 2 side pieces at 46.5 inches. These cuts will leave very little waste. We're starting to put the frame together. We're going to butt them together so that the long ones are on the inside, the 24-inch panels here are on the outside. I make sure that I drill a pilot hole in the sides here where the screws are going to go to prevent this small wood from splitting. Now I want to make sure to drill these holes with a space from the edge, as the support rails are also going to be screwed into the side piece and we don't want the screws to cross paths. Screws that I'm going to be using are a size 8 by 1 1/4, so just long enough to go into the pieces here. I'd like to get a few more of these built before the weather turns to crap. It's got some gray clouds coming in. Try to square these up. It's always nice to make sure you got good wood. This stuff, well, it's a little bit warped. It's not perfectly square, so sometimes it doesn't quite line up perfectly. Not bad though. So for the inside support pieces of these frames, you're going to want to build the outside frame first and then measure the distance in between, because the wood thickness varies from batch to batch. So you just want to make sure that they're a nice snug fit. So once your frame is built, make sure to measure that inside dimension of the frame, because we want to cut those support rails to the same size and you want them to be nice and snug. So for me, I'm looking at about 22 3/8. This is what the completed piece looks like. So the whole frame on the outside, inside piece screwed in, board split a little bit, even with a pilot hole, so gotta be careful. But fits in there not too bad. And then we'll just have to get the insulation in it, and then we cover it with fabric, make it look pretty. Down in the studio now. All the panels are built. Just to show some before footage here before they go up on the wall. So this is the studio space. I'm planning on putting studio panels along the back of the drums here, behind the studio monitors. So that's all gonna go up in here. Panel here, panel there. The dimensions and number of panels that I'm building is directly related to the size and number of bats of insulation that come in one of these packages. They are 2 feet by 4 feet in size and come in packs of 8. I'm using the Rockwool Safe and Sound. They are fire resistant and sound absorbing, perfect for absorbing those reflections off the wall. This package sells in stores for $60. So I'll be using a staple gun and some staples here. 5/16 inch. They don't need to be too big, just enough to go through the fabric and into the frame. Fabric that I have chosen is just a simple black fabric. It's got some thin sort of pinstripe lines in it, just a little bit of texture, but not really noticeable. Mostly it's just going to be black. So this fabric, they sell it in 60-inch wide rolls, which is what we need for the height of the panel. And then in order to do the 8 panels, 2 feet across, and then wrapping around the side and just stapling it to the back, I estimated about 7.5 meters long. So that's how much I've picked up. Hopefully I've got enough. If not, it was pretty cheap. Fabricland, $45 in total for all of this. I think it was $6 a meter. So not too bad. So I started just by laying out the fabric on the ground here. And then I'm just going to put the panel down on it. Try to get it centered. And we're just going to need enough to, sort of wrap around the back. We'll put a separate backing piece on afterwards. The backing piece doesn't matter as much because you're not going to see it up against the wall. So we just want to make sure that we have enough of this fabric to go up and around the side and staple it to the back. Now, we don't even need this much. This is too much waste. We can just have it come up about to there. And then we'll be doing a fold and a cut in the corner in order to wrap it nicely. So if you did your measuring right and you built everything appropriately, the insulation should fit perfectly within the frame. So this, of course, is the front side. The support panels are on the back. They're going to help hold it in. So we're actually going to end up flipping this over onto the fabric here. Fabric's cut, centered in the piece there. I got about 5 inches on either side, top, bottom. And we're going to want to make a nice corner on this. So in order to do that, you can kind of think about wrapping a Christmas present, folding the paper over and wrapping that corner. But if we cut a little piece out of the corner here, it'll actually make it just a little bit nicer. There'll be less bulky fabric sticking out of the corner. So I've just cut a little piece out of the corner like so, and it'll just allow for the fold to go up and then not have so much fabric overlapping. So I got the corner pieces all cut out, so it's time to start stapling this. I'm going to start on the long sides. I'm going to staple and pull it nice and tight, just tight enough to keep it tension, but not so tight that we're going to rip the fabric. Use a hammer to pound in any of those pesky staples that don't want to go all the way in. Now that's a pretty clean corner, even for being the back of the panel, which we're not going to see. And I honestly don't really know exactly how I did that, so I'm going to try to show you. But you sort of just got to play with it, do a couple folds, and then you can get that nice flat line across the side. I'm going to attempt to do the same thing on this side using that same folding technique. The way I started, bringing this one up. What I want to do is, this is the end that you're going to see on the corner. So I want to give it a fold in itself so that you see a nice straight clean and not the cut that I made. So I'm going to fold it over just a little bit and sort of line that up with this corner there. Something like that. And then the rest we want to tuck in so we don't have this bulge of fabric. I'm going to start by bringing up the corner, making sure that's nice and tight. And I'm going to find that end piece, and where it lines up with the side, I'm going to give it just that little fold in it just to make it nice and clean. And then I'm going to sort of push that down as I push this one in and pull that snug like so. I still have a little bit of fabric bulging in here. I may need to cut some more out to get this a little bit cleaner. Yep, not as good as the first one. But from the front, you're not going to see it. So by the third one now, corners are getting a little bit cleaner. I think I've got this figured out. Yeah. 3 down, 5 to go. I brought this into consideration after wrapping fabric around the first 2 panels. You may want to take the time to just take some sandpaper and just round off the corners. Make sure that the fabric doesn't rip. They're pretty sharp. There. Much nicer on the fabric. The fabric will really appreciate what I've done here. So the back of the completed panel looks something like this. Got the corners folded around, stapled, and I had a little bit of fabric left over from this covering, so I'm going to do a couple of these with that, and then I have some other fabric that's not as good that I'll use for the rest. Since you're not going to see it anyways, it's mostly just to hold the insulation in. So my measurements are actually pretty good. So we've got 2 feet straight across, and 4 feet down. So I'm just going to cut the rest of my fabric to exactly that length. So I've just laid the fabric down and began stapling it so that it stays. I'm going to give it just a little bit of an inlap because, you know, the fabric wraps around the edge there, so you don't need it to overhang the edge. This little bit of extra that's hanging over here, I'm going to cut it off a little bit shorter, and it'll just sit nicely on the backing here. And once I get to the other side, I'll just cut this at the right length. And just like that, the backing is done. Not pretty, obviously, with all the staples, but you're not going to see it anyways. Flip it up and look at the front side, and perfect. Studio panel complete. So for the remaining 6 panels I have left, I'm going to use this backing fabric. It's just a thin, plain black fabric, something that you'd find on the bottom of chairs, couches, things like that. It's cheap, and it'll work for the back since you're not going to see it. Now comes the time to mount these on the walls. Depending on your studio situation, whether you own or rent the space, you may want to consider a non-damaging method for mounting. For me, it's as simple as using 1 box of 3.5-inch common nails for just $5.59 and a stud finder. So what I've done here is just made 2 incisions in the backing fabric, and I'm just going to hang these up on the nails using the support rail of the frame. And voila! All of my panels are built and hanging up on the walls. So now I'm just going to do a quick recap of all the materials involved. There was the lumber for $111.84, screws $9.98, insulation $59.99, staples, $5.99, fabrics, $60.85, and nails for $5.59, for a grand total of $254.24. If you have any questions about this process, or if there's something I forgot to mention in this video, feel free to drop me a comment, or find me on Instagram or Facebook and reach out. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. Keep on grinding, and never stop the music.